Hey guys, wanted to take a second to talk about something that comes up on a fairly regular basis, and instead of always answering it, thought maybe if I do a short video, maybe I can just nip the problem in the bud, or at least have a place to send people. The problem that I'm talking about, or the issue that comes up, is whenever somebody who advocates an integrated approach to training, right? Trying to be a multidisciplinary tactician, to use Craig Douglas's phrase. When any one of us, myself, Paul Sharp, Craig, Larry Lindemann, Chris Fry, or somebody, Chuck Haggard, Greg Ellifritz, any one of those guys who tries to post an article, a video, something positive talking about hand-to-hand fighting, training for unarmed combat, training to integrate hand-to-hand into the shooting problem. There's always a number of people who will pipe up and say something along the lines, yes, that would be good to have, but I'm X, take your pick. I'm too old, I'm too injured, I don't have time, etc. There's always some reason why they can't do it. Now, and I think there's probably a tiny percentage of that person making that comment, a tiny percentage of that person who's looking at it to excuse their failure, right? They want an external reason for their internal failure to do it. You know, they don't have the discipline or whatever. But I think that's a tiny percentage. I think far more people who say that, especially the person who talks about, well, I don't have the time, I don't have 10 years to put in to get good at empty hand stuff. I think that person is coming from a position of honest ignorance. They just don't know because they haven't trained it, they haven't stepped foot in the gym, they haven't encountered the training, so they don't really know. Where this came up recently was my buddy Paul Sharp of Sharp Defense in Straight Blast Gym, Illinois. There's a video that went viral of a police officer who had been knocked down by a suspect, and he was on the ground and the suspect was standing above him. And the confrontation went on for an extended period where the officer couldn't get up. The bad guy was standing right over him, and the only thing that really saved the officer was help arriving. And Paul put up just a quick video that basically said, hey, here's a very simple fundamental jiu-jitsu sweep from that position that would enable the officer to have gotten back to his feet and taken the other guy down. And then there are people who say, oh, that's great, but you know, years and years and years to train that. And here's the thing. That's not true. With fundamental Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, legitimate training in it, not somebody who's learned it from a book, not somebody who's learned from a seminar, not somebody who's doing what they think Jiu-Jitsu is, but somebody who's actually put the time to train it. That's not how it's taught. Jiu-Jitsu is always based, Elio Gracie, the grandmaster of it, always had the idea that this needed to be useful for every man. This needed to be useful for the smaller, weaker person. And they didn't have 10 years to train it. So all these techniques had to work on very fundamental, basic leverage issues and performing the technique, and had to be done, they couldn't be very complicated. And all the fundamental movements in Jiu-Jitsu, the stuff that you learn in the first few months to the first year or two of Jiu-Jitsu, is all this basic fundamental stuff. There's this misconception that some of the flashy stuff you see in competition, or some of the flashier YouTube stuff, oh, that's Jiu-Jitsu. Well, it is, but it's a very specific subset. It's not the fundamental stuff. That fancy stuff comes about when you have two equal peers who are now competing against each other. They know the same stuff. They have the same basic athletic physical capability. So they know everything that the other person knows. So they need something else sometimes to kind of break that stalemate. So that's where some of the more esoteric stuff comes about. But make no mistake, understand, that is for a high-level practitioner. This is a very specific thing. And those high-level practitioners, it's all based on years and years of doing fundamental core jiu-jitsu. You go into any jiu-jitsu gym, any legitimate one in the world, and the stuff you learn, the techniques you learn in those first couple months, you're going to be able to do against a resisting opponent. Now, here's where the problem comes about. You're doing this in a gym with essentially your peers, guys and girls, who've trained and done the same thing you're doing, and they know what you're trying to do. So you go, oh man, I'm trying to do this basic sweep. The sweep Paul showed in his video, tripod sweep. That's literally a sweep taught to kids, 5, 6, 7-year-old kids, early in their jiu-jitsu career, in the first month or two, and their techniques that they then use in a short period of time and do it well. So if kids are able to do it, certainly we as adults aren't going to have any particular problem doing it. And you try to do that, where it comes as a problem, like I said, is you're trying to do that technique to somebody who knows what's happening. So they're knowing what you're trying to do, they're knowing how to defend it, and it becomes this problem where I try to do something, he tries to do something, I try to do something, he tries, and on and on. That's not the case in a self-defense context. That the video with the police officer, perfect example. If you saw how the attacker was standing, he's in a perfect position to be swept and taken down. His balance is poor, his base and his foot position is poor. This technique would have worked, I guarantee you, would have worked incredibly well. And it would have worked if that officer had a month's worth of training. And that's not hyperbole, guys. Here's where you see that, right? When you're training in the jiu-jitsu gym with the other guys who are training with you, it becomes hard and you get frustrated. I get that question as a coach all the time. Man, coach, I don't think I'm getting any better because, I try to do this stuff against this guy and this guy and this guy, and I just can't pull it off. And I just say, you're doing fine. I've watched you, the mechanics are fine, just keep doing it. And then what happens at some point, might be the next day, the next class, new guy walks in who's never done jiu-jitsu before. He's taking a class for the first time. He partners up with that guy who just said he was sucking and having the problem and couldn't perform anything. You know what's going to happen? He's going to perform that move successfully, perfectly, and exactly the way it's supposed to. And I get the follow-up right away. Coach, I couldn't believe it. I pulled it off and it was so easy, and it felt like he fell down on his own. I didn't feel like I was doing anything. It was perfect. And I'm like, yes, that's how it happens. With just a little bit of training, 1, 2, 3 months of training at a legitimate gym under good coaching, and you then go against somebody who doesn't know this at all, it's going to work. It's not a commitment. You don't need to be doing this for 5, 6, 7 years to be able to pull this stuff off. Trust me, guys, I'm no genius. I'm no physical genius. I'm the farthest things from it. So when I say anybody can do this, I'm a living example, because I'm at the bottom of the heap when it comes to being able to pull this stuff off. And I can do it, right? Certainly, there are some gyms I know for a fact from firsthand experience that would do this. You come to my coach's gym, Megaton Jiu-Jitsu, Phoenix, Gracie, whom I taught Phoenix. You go to Paul Sharp's gym, Straight Brass Gym, Illinois, in Elgin, Illinois. You go to Carlson Gracie Aurora in Illinois, where my buddy Larry Lindemann teaches. I know, you go to that gym, any of those gyms, you train for a couple months, you will be able to perform this stuff against a fully resisting opponent who's trying to hurt you. But I'm very confident in saying any legitimate gym is going to be a fairly similar situation, because jiu-jitsu is built that way. It's built that way from the ground up. There is a reason why when this was first introduced in the US and became popular about 88, 89, there's a reason why every single martial arts system on the planet has had to adapt to some variation or addition of jiu-jitsu to their own system. They can't ignore it. They couldn't just say, oh, we'll take care of it like this. They had to train it and learn how to deal with it because it works, and it works on that fundamental level. So, hope that makes sense. So hopefully this will encourage you to go, yes, you don't have a whole lot of time. You don't have 10 years to devote to this. Cool. Find a good legitimate gym. Train 2 one-hour classes a week. Give it 3 months. If you don't feel like you can perform one of those techniques against somebody, a brand new person who has no idea what you're trying to do, give me a shout and we'll talk. All right? So, as always, I'm always open to questions, comments, whatever. Just shoot me a line, cecil@iacombatives.com, and I hope to talk to you guys here pretty quick. Thanks.